going to be some great content coming up. And speaking of great content, Familia, I'm just telling you, I am just telling you, when I say todos somos familia, I say it every episode. It's people like this that I'm talking about. And when I did my very first live stream for the Rum Boys a couple years ago, he was on there. He's been awesome ever since. I've been a big fan of his. For some reason, he's been a big fan of mine. And I can't tell you just the mad respect and adoration and mad love that I've got for this guy. He's been a buen amigo, not just here, but just in real life. He's a compadre. And seriously, beyond that, one of the most talented people, not only in this industry, but that I know. I mean, I heard him sing this past August at the Fantasy Football Expo and Familia. I mean, the man brought it. I mean, he's a talented musician. His voice could convince you to buy anything from soap to salsa. And his fantasy football analysis is as spot on, distinctive, and authoritative as his great voice. The folks over at Draft Sharks, they are lucky to have him. And we're lucky to have him here. So, bienvenido. It's my buen amigo, my compadre. Herms, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, muy bien. ¿Y tú, Jorge? ¿Y tú?
Oh man, you're here with me. Oh my God. Let me tell you, Familia, when I went to the Fantasy Football Expo, and someone told me Herms is here, and then I saw him come up, and I was just like, I was a little bit afraid I might hurt him by squeezing him too hard by giving him a hug, but amigo, oh, so good to see you. Sending you another one coast to coast.
Oh, God. I can feel it. I can already feel it. Oh, it's such a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's so great to be here to talk to you about different stuff. Oh my God.
Oh man. And I know you're going to opening day tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be down in our nation's capital to watch probably the worst Major League Baseball team kick it off against the Braves. So at least I know there are going to be a lot of runs scored, just probably not for the Nationals.
Hey, you know what? There's something to be said. There's going to be some players that are playing for individual performances that are going to be good. I mean, keep an eye on C.J. Abrams, that shortstop. He's wicked fast. He's like Devon Chain fast. He's Tyreek Hill fast. Oh man. So and Draft Sharks, my brother, I mean, you landed there and it's been I mean, tell me it's been everything you've been wanting it to be.
It's been incredible. I mean, I got to meet my coworkers in person for the first time in February. We had a really cool, company retreat, doing some fun stuff. And like it's a good fit. Everybody's like super supportive in terms of just like encouraging each other's work, getting good feedback on each other's work, and really collaborating super well as a group. So I think that's it's been a great experience. Like I know there are plenty of sites that have huge teams full of a bunch of people doing a bunch of different things, but the cool thing about Draft Sharks is that it's just a very, very small group of us at the core, always working on stuff together, and it's it's a very familia type environment. So
Oh man, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm sure you guys will hear a lot of Todos Somos Familia there too. So that's awesome. I tell you, there are a few people that got such a universal hallelujah, cheer, standing ovation as when Herms went full time, and that's just blessing. So awesome, brother. Can't wait. Keep checking out his content, Familia. So to find him at Herms NFL on the Twitter machine, but also DraftSharks.com. You're going to see all this stuff, especially so much great fantasy football. I mean, NFL draft content that's coming up. I mean, I've chopped it up with him about the draft, and the man knows his stuff. It's God, can't wait. I've been checking out your stuff. I was just checking out your Zach Evans article the other day. So yeah, solid, brother, solid.
Thank you.
Since we're speaking of running backs, the year I wanted to bring on guests, talk about a year or two that's such an important year. When it comes to running backs, it could be Jonathan Taylor 2021, where he was the RB1. Last year, Rhamondre Stevenson came out of what looked like a platoon, and he just became a guy. the year two running back, when you look at it, how important is that year to a guy, maybe even becoming fantasy viable for more than just a couple years?
Dude, year two is so big. Well, not only from a fantasy perspective, man, but like I know I've read some stuff. Shout out the Athletic. Really like reading their stuff. Like particularly, I mean, Najee Harris is the example that I get to use because I read a lot of Steelers content, but like even he admitted, like after his first season, it was like, yo, dude, like I wasn't prepared for this. Like I got to condition different. I have to do some different stuff with like, the distribution of my weight and muscles and stuff. And, like the conditioning to, prepare yourself for that level of competition. And then the fact that it's like, if you can perform in year two, after you've had a full season of like all these teams have tape on you now. This isn't just some merely hypothetical thing where we're just like, oh, we saw this guy in college, but we've never seen him on an NFL field before. It's like if you can be super effective in year two, now that everybody's seen you, now that you know what to expect, like, dude, it's a true test. It is a true test of skill and talent and all sorts of other things.
And it's so important. We see that breakout. The guy, when you talked about it right there. Guys, when they know how to really train for the NFL, they, how to take care of their bodies, how to rest, recuperate, and everything like that, they really start to grow up. And that's when you see that it's kind of like that perfect point where the hits haven't compiled up on them, and they've still got those fresh legs that we love to talk about. So that's where you see the explosive years that come out of there. And this class, that the class that we're talking about is the 2022 class. So these guys that are going into their second year, it wasn't as ballyhooed as a class as the one that we've got coming in with Bijan Robinson and those guys, but there are some guys that really popped up. And I'm gonna go. We're gonna go through some of them right here, and I want to get some thoughts on them and kind of like the outlook for them for this year. So number one, he was the highest ranked rookie last year by the highest finish with Kenneth Walker. He had over 1,000 yards. He had 1,050 yards, rushed for 9 touchdowns, didn't catch as much, 27 receptions for 165 yards. Right now, he's going at ADP as the RB5. So far, he doesn't have a lot of competition. He ended up taking the gig last year from Rashad Penny. When you talk about Walker, what's your excitement level for him this year?
I'm pretty excited, man. Even with the expectation that they'll add depth behind him, because Rashad Penny going over to Philadelphia, he's already out of the picture. If I remember correctly, I think Travis Homer is now a member of the Bears. So they're going to have to do a little bit of something there. But like Walker showed that he can be that type of Nick Chubb player that despite the fact that there's not going to be a ton of receiving work to speak of, the floor is going to be high enough for your fantasy teams just because he runs so well and runs so efficiently. And they trust him with a lot of carries when he's healthy. And I think the other really cool thing that he has going for him in the grand scheme of just the entire ecosystem of the offense is that Geno Smith is going to be back. So we don't have to worry about the hypothetical of there being a new young quarterback in there right away. So even if Seattle does end up selecting a quarterback, it's going to be Geno Smith for a while. So that level of continuity, great for pretty much everybody involved in the Seahawks offense. So, I'm not sure quite how I feel about Kenneth Walker's price in Dynasty per se, but at least as far as just looking ahead to this year specifically, I have no doubts or concerns.
What have you been getting? What kind of offers are you seeing out there when it comes to Walker in Dynasty leagues?
I can't really speak to that because unfortunately I don't have any Kenneth Walker on any of my teams. It's but we did a podcast over about it over at Draft Sharks about it a little while ago, and so keep in mind I've been just knee deep doing a lot of the incoming rookie profile stuff, so I haven't quite kept up with the Dynasty market. But like, dude, Ken Walker was like I think RB3 last time we checked and all that stuff, and I'm just like, bro. Like, for a dude that doesn't catch passes, I don't know if I really want to go that hard with it. Like, no offense to the guy. Everything I just said is still true. But, like, if we're going to put together dynasty ranks for half or full PPR, I don't really want a guy that doesn't catch passes that high. But I don't know. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, man. I don't blame anybody for valuing him as high as they do, just because like he's super good. So I get it.
He's a great runner. I mean, I remember last year, Graham Barfield ranked him as his best the best rusher in this class in his yards created. Though he put Breece Hall ahead of him because he had the better landing spot. Ken Walker definitely exploded. Had himself a good year. Only one of 2,000-yard rushers. That ADP, just the ADP or the ECR ranking right now as the RB5. Just for redraft, it feels like it could be right, but it could be a little high. But I don't know. I mean, if he's going to blow up, it's going to be this year, and hopefully,
I could see it, man. And I think part of that feeling of it, maybe being a little bit too high comes with the territory of the fact that, I mean, like I said, he's kind of a Nick Chubb type, where like everybody loves Nick Chubb. Anytime we talk about players like that, it's just like one of the best pure runners in the NFL. We love those guys. But, it depends on your scoring format. Like if you're going to rank a guy with that, production profile like that high, you're kind of just banking on there being like a ton of touchdowns to supplement the fact that they're not going to catch a ton of passes, which like I guess could be feasible for somebody like Ken Walker. I mean, I don't know. We were all pretty surprised at how good the Seahawks offense was last year, and they made the playoffs. So it's not like we're talking about just some scrub team where, because there were a few years with the Browns there where it was just like, well, how often are they going to get close enough for Chubb to punch it in? Like that's the key difference between the two here. Like I definitely feel better about this Seahawks offense than we did about, the Baker Mayfield led Browns offenses for a little bit there. So, I mean, distinction there for sure, but redraft purposes, love me some Ken Walker.
Oh man. Well, one guy that just kind of surprised, and I grabbed him. I grabbed him on a couple of dynasty teams kind of late, and he actually helped me go to the finals on a team that lost Javonte Williams. Tyler Algier from the Falcons, the other 1,000-yard rusher among the rookies from the 2022 class. 1,035 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a nice run there at the end. He was, he finished strong, finished well during the fantasy playoffs. He was kind of running by himself. Cordarrelle Patterson wasn't as much of a factor down the end of the season. I know we're hearing some Bijan Robinson talk, but when it comes to the Falcons, they do love to run the ball. I mean, I'm a little bit bullish on him if he can avoid a major running back addition. He's the RB25 right now and number 64 overall in ECR. What are your thoughts on him?
I think that price is pretty appropriate. Like you said, if he does avoid there being the presence of somebody like a Bijan Robinson, like the dude showed that he's a really good runner, man. Like there's going to be concerns about what that Falcons offense can be, whether it's Desmond Ridder or if he struggles, Taylor Heineke takes over playing quarterback or something. But like that's kind of that risk is priced in to the point where like, being in that high end RB3 range, I mean, like that's about what it's about what you'd expect. So I'm not entirely sure if the disappearing act of Cordarrelle Patterson is going to continue for next year, and I was about to say next year and beyond, but with how old Cordarrelle Patterson is, I don't know that there is much of a beyond. But yeah, I mean, he is a pretty important player for that offense, particularly because we've already seen the Falcons like add pieces here and there, bringing in certain receivers, but like it's a lot of depth guys. It's like not a ton of super high impact type signings. So with all of the moves that they've made so far, there would still be a need for a guy like Cordarrelle Patterson, just so that way Ridder has someone to throw to. And if I remember correctly, Kyle Pitts tore his ACL pretty late in the season there. So, I mean, like, who knows if he's going to be ready right away. I haven't really checked in on anything about that specifically, but like either way, at least as far as Tyler Algier goes, that dude can run, man. That dude can run. I really hope that he can maintain his status on that depth chart because he was a lot of fun.
He's a big time runner. Now, one thing about Pitts, it wasn't a torn ACL. It was a knee injury, but it was so he didn't have that as long a rehab on as far as him is concerned. So,
thank God.
yeah, I know. because that's yeah, exactly. We don't need that. We don't need that. It's bad enough. The tight end landscape's bad enough, but Algier, I mean, he's that big banger that I think can be a factor. I think he'll be a factor in the red zone again as long as they avoid somebody like that. I think CPAT is going to be more of a hybrid guy again, but yeah, man. Want to welcome in some amigos into the chat. So before we go on to the next guy, Mr. Scampers saying a big shout out to Mr. Scampers. ¿Cómo estás, mi amigo? El gato. Happy opening day tomorrow. I'm wearing this one for all the Dodger fans out there. So all the Los Dodgers fans. For Albert, orale, how are you? And oh my God, north of the border, Toronto Dave in the house.
What up?
Dave, oh my goodness, thank you for joining us. And Peng's picks, muchas gracias. Yeah, we all squirm for Herms. Squirm for Herms. That's a good one. So, and Toronto, yes, quietly productive for Tyler Algier, very much quietly productive. So thank you everybody for joining us. Please keep throwing your comments in the chat, and we're just going to keep having fun here. Looking at the next guy. This was one of my home runs from last year, Dameon Pierce for the Houston Texans. He had 939 yards and 4 touchdowns last year, 30 receptions for 165 yards. So a decent year. He did miss 4 games with a sprained ankle at the end of the season. And now he has to deal with Devin Singletary in the running back room. I was really excited, but I really wanted him to not get any additions in free agency. Does that concern you, that move?
Yeah, it did. And then I tweeted about it, and I think people kind of got mad. But it's one of those things, dude. Okay, so when the Singletary signing happened, I saw a lot of people reacting as this like, "Oh, this is good," and I'm like, "Okay, well, Dameon Pierce was a volume-dependent running back to." At least in terms of the contributions that he would get, because like the Texans offense wasn't very good and he needed all of those carries to compile those stats for your team. And then he wore down as the year went along. He kind of, faded out a little bit, and to which people were like, "Oh, what are you talking about? It's just the ankle injury. That's not really burning out." I'm like, well, that game against the Commanders and that game against the Dolphins, I can't remember which one came first, but there was that 2-week window there where I think he ran the ball like 15 times for a collective like 13 yards or whatever. Remember that? Like, because he had never exceeded that, certain number of carries when he played in college at Florida, because the offense that he belonged to in college was a very annoying, like 3 or 4 headed monster of a committee. So it was inevitable that Dameon Pierce was going to have at least somebody added there. And, which a fair thing that a lot of people pointed out, just like we kind of expected something to happen. But then the refrain about the Singletary signing was like, "Oh, well, Singletary's not good, so this is good." I'm like, okay, well, regardless of what we feel about Devin Singletary, he showed that he can carry a rather sizable workload playing for the Buffalo Bills in his career. I think he went over 200 touches each of the last couple of years. Like, regardless of what we think of him, like, it's a guy that is capable of shouldering a big load, which is an immediate threat to somebody like Dameon Pierce. And they already needed not just somebody behind Pierce, but just like a whole group of people behind Pierce. Like, the whole position group as a whole lacked depth. So there's nothing really stopping them from continuing to add somebody on like day 2 or day 3 of the NFL draft either. It takes them out of the running for somebody like Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs or something, but like there's a lot of really quality guys in this draft, and there's probably going to be a third head in that monster we'll end up seeing. But if you treat Dameon Pierce appropriately and you kind of just measure your expectations, then like, yeah, he's probably going to be pretty good. We're maybe more of a flex guy this year. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. If he punches it into the end zone, great. If he doesn't, and you're playing in like a standard scoring league, like, you're good. It's fine. But the odds of him reaching the heights he did at points last year, I think, are kind of gone.
Yeah, and you mentioned those games. Week 11, Washington, 10 carries, 8 yards, and then the following week at Miami, 5 carries, 8 yards. I mean, he righted the ship after that. Went for 73 yards against Cleveland. Cleveland was giving up yards on the ground all over the place. Dallas also, he got 78 yards, and that was the game where he got injured, but 22 carries. So, I mean, kind of he had that, but yeah, I mean, he was definitely hitting the wall. And you're right, he was a guy who just had never seen that kind of workload. And he's the guy I keep hearing. I've heard a couple of comps, I'm very proud that I was one of the first people to make the comp. Roschon Johnson to him, the guy who doesn't get a lot of work, and maybe is a guy that gets that gets a featured role and goes with some. I think you're right. I think Devin Singletary is going to eat into his touches a little bit. I could still see him getting, total touches in the 200, low 200, 225, thereabouts. But I can see Singletary still getting 100 to 150 just to take the edge off. I think it's gonna drop his ADP a little bit, because right now his ADP is number 44 overall. He's going to be RB19. I think by the time the summer comes around, I think that's going to come down.
Yeah, at that price now, I'm definitely not feeling it. But if it goes down a little bit and we manage our expectations properly, then like absolutely. But like 19, dude, RB19, bro. I'm not doing that. No.
Yeah, that's a little rich. I'm hoping. I think earlier I saw an ECR on him in the 60s, where number 60 overall, 60 to 64, something thereabouts. And I was like, okay, I could see that. I could dive in with him on that one. But 44, that seems a little rich. So, just a quick hello, Dame Overboard. Yes, hola, la dama, and yes, Mr. Scampers, go Dodgers. So yeah, we're Nats and Dodgers. We want them to win tomorrow, so they're not playing at the same time. So vámonos. You mentioned someone who's got a lot of heat around him, and I mean, when a guy scores a touchdown in the Super Bowl, has a nice little late season run. ISIAH Pacheco. It's funny. In August, one of my tweets that got a lot of one of my funny tweets that got a lot of play. I just saw a street sign that said Pacheco Way, and I was like, oh, the hype has already started for this guy, and people seem to love that one. But ISIAH Pacheco, he's he finished the season strong. Was only a factor on the ground, 830 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. Kind of got red zone, probably not as much as you'd like to see as a guy who's going to be getting this many, who in this kind of offense. Lost some carries to Jerick McKinnon. He's right now the RB27 over and number 72 overall. They still haven't re-signed McKinnon. Yeah. Do you see someone kind of coming in and relegating Pacheco to maybe being at best an RB2 but a flex play?
It's possible, I mean, like you said, the McKinnon not being there as we currently speak, very good news. So like, if that continues to be true, then like huge thing going in his favor. But as far as Pacheco goes, dude, like, well, also first of all, like, I know that we don't care nearly as much about him anymore as we used to, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire still exists. And if we remember correctly, toward the beginning of the year, there was a time when he was healthy that he was just punching in touchdowns. Just like that was his thing. Even if that was like the only thing he did during, like, for the offense during those games, they schemed up those touches for CEH. So like, can't argue with that. But, barring some like big investments from like a day 2 guy or something from the Chiefs, like I still feel pretty good about ISIAH Pacheco. I mean, from a dynasty perspective, like you always gotta be worried about the dude, like 7th round pick, the undrafted free agent, like type level of running backs and stuff. Like that hit rate is not high at all. And the last thing you want to do is convince yourself. Because we saw what happened with James Robinson, where it's just like, all right, here we go. We found the outlier. Everything's fixed. Doesn't matter. I don't need to hear any other previous examples of this. It's never going to stop. And then it stops because the NFL replaces you with somebody with, a little higher pedigree, quote unquote, little more college production, stuff like that. But like until those wheels come off for your redraft teams, for your best ball teams, ISIAH Pacheco is on arguably the best offense. I mean, like you said, they just won the Super Bowl, so it's pretty hard to argue against that. There can only be one of those teams every year. So, like, yeah, dude, I'm here for it. I don't want to get like too excited, just because I think we've seen time and time again, like, with the Chiefs, and I guess like to some degree a little bit with the Bills, but for different reasons. Like, you know, like high-powered offenses, like great for opportunities. You know, of course, you want to be in a good offense if you want to score, you know, at least have the potential to score a ton of fantasy points. But like the Chiefs running back hasn't mattered quite as much as, you know, certain other things. But I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole because that's a whole separate discussion. But yeah, for now, thumbs up, ISIAH Pacheco.
Oh man, and yes, muchas gracias, Jay. G-Man Jay. Much love, brother. Much love. Thank you for the compliment. You know that, yeah. When you threw out the James Robinson comp, I mean, right there, James Robinson. I mean, a few years earlier, Philip Lindsay. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I really think they're going to add to that room. And you know what, Jerick McKinnon is still out there. So he's still a free agent. So there is the possibility he gets re-signed back. Maybe the Chiefs are waiting to see what comes to them in the NFL draft. I mean, they're a team that can actually, they really refurbished their defense a lot last year. And I mean, they're going to add, but man, I just, I want to see him be unopposed, but I can't see it. I can't see it. And they definitely didn't trust him in the air, but the one thing about it, when he's on the field, he's going to get the ball because he's going to have running room because he's never going to see 8 men in a box. And I mean, and they've got a good offensive line, both really good guards and centers. So they're going to be able to move, open holes for him. So I still like, Pacheco is kind of like a sneaky 1,000-yard rusher next year. And the second guy to be kind of like that slash kind of Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if he lives up to that his pedigree. Now that's the thing about CEH. It's going to be year 4, so it's kind of like he's got to put up or shut up and be that guy if he wants to get a 5th-year contract, because he is a first-round draft pick. So sometimes those guys they get a little bit scared into actually getting themselves ready. So yes, and Jay, you're not kidding about this wonderful chat. Just love this. Some of my favorite people in here. So muchas gracias for joining us. You know what? This one's in your backyard. Brian Robinson probably should have been comeback player of the year. I mean, I know Geno Smith, but just being able to come back from a gunshot wound. Only missed 4 games, had himself a decent year. He ended up with 797 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's not rehabbing this year, so hopefully, everything continues well. The question is he going to be featured? And they still have Antonio Gibson there. The tea leaves in your neck of the woods. And you hearing anything on Brian Robinson?
Maybe not so much about Brian Robinson, but just like see your point about Antonio Gibson. Like I feel like that whole experiment's kind of just like over. Like it's like first coming into the league, that quote from Ron Rivera. Look, okay, if Ron Rivera had just never said we could see him filling some sort of Christian McCaffrey role, I feel like this whole we would have been fine as a fantasy football society. We would have been better off if Ron Rivera had not uttered those words. But dude, I don't know. And I'm glad that we're not seeing nearly as many of the Antonio Gibson truthers going to battle on the Twitter timeline as often, because at a certain point you just have to throw your hands up and say okay, all right, fine, it's over, at least as far as him being like a superstar on the Commanders is concerned. He's still young enough, he could go somewhere else, who knows. I'm not declaring Antonio Gibson's the remainder of his career dead by any means, but I think it's pretty clear from what we saw last year that it's this is Brian Robinson's backfield. Now that said, they're gonna need to add somebody there because for similar reasons like we were talking about with the Texans, but not quite to the same extent. Depth is an issue. I know that JD McKissick's already gone, and much beyond that, they had a couple guys that they called up from the practice squad at different times that were okay, but they really need to address that position group. I know when a few of the mock drafts that I've seen, cornerback's a huge need for them. Tackle, offensive line stuff, still a huge need, linebacker as well. But I've seen more than a few mocks where they're just maybe Bijan Robinson would be fun. And I'm just that would be such like a Ron Rivera thing to do, like such a Commanders thing to do. I could see it, but at least with that probably not happening, because those other needs that I mentioned are definitely of greater importance. Like I'm here for Brian Robinson, dude. I'm not really that worried about Gibson. I'm not really worried about, even if they do add depth behind it, like we saw B-Rob, like when he finally made it back and like really started to get rolling, like he was the dude, like the flex spot in your lineup. If you just like didn't know what to do and you were just like, oh, what about blah, blah, blah. Just Brian Robinson, bro. Like he'll run for just enough yards to be super helpful, and he managed to just fall into the end zone routinely. It was wonderful. Like he's so good at doing that stuff, man. I'm absolutely here for it. It's going to be weird to see with Sam Howell, but again, that's a whole other rabbit hole I can't go down right now, because if I start going down that rabbit hole, I will not stop talking. But yes, thumbs up for Brian Robinson. Big fan. I hope to see him succeed.
I think you're right. I mean, I think the Bijan landing spot that we keep talking about is something that we just don't know, because there's not the perfect landing spot unless he falls all the way to the Bengals at what 28 or something like that. I know. Well, I know from a fantasy perspective, we'd all love that. I don't know how much the Steeler Nation would love that. So
that would be horrible.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. They have needs. They've been beaten up in the air over the years, but yeah, man. But yeah, you're right, Jay. It would be great. And by the way, happy opening day eve to you too. But it would be very much a riverboat Ron kind of thing. The Panthers fan,
just saying,
wouldn't be a shocker with Riverboat Ron. Would not a shocker in the least. You know what? The next one had a bit, had somewhat of an addition. James Cook got a running mate in free agency, but I mean, it's somebody. Gosh, I mean, every down back. I mean, is it? I want to look through the peephole and just be like, and say that he gets an Austin Eckler kind of role, where he ends up getting like 1,000 total yards between rushing and receiving, and gets, and somewhere in 8 to 10 touchdowns, and is a really big factor in PPR. Am I being overly hopeful?
It's tough to say right now, especially because the thing I really need to find out personally is that like I need to know the validity of the comment that Sean McDermott made not long ago, Bill's head coach, about Josh Allen's play style, and how like at a certain point, like, hey man, like maybe stop doing the reckless running thing. Which, like, not to say that he's just going to stop running entirely, because, like, why would you just waste that significant of a facet of his game? Like, of course not. But at least as far as, like, how that would affect the running backs potentially is just, like that's the thing that's been stopping, like, the fantasy value of Bills running backs, is when you get in close. What is the likeliest thing that the Bills are going to do in the red zone? It's probably just going to be Josh Allen barreling over people and just taking it in himself. If they want to be more conservative with him, then that will immediately boost the fantasy upside of all of these guys. Now, like you said, James Cook did see somebody come in, and, that person being Damian Harris, he has shown through his career in New England, like he could be a pretty effective goal line back. So even if they do change up some of the kind of things, bring in the reins a little bit on Josh Allen, I feel like that'll just be more of a big thumbs up for Harris than Cook. But, if they don't manage to add much else to the wide receiver room, Josh Allen is going to have to throw to somebody else, because now don't get me wrong, Stephon Diggs, that dude's great. Dawson Knox, they've got a connection. Allen to Knox is just all the time, every day. Love it. But the Gabe Davis thing, a lot of people were super excited about it. Kind of only paid off once last year, which was against the Steelers. So that was cool. Thanks, Gabe Davis. But but beyond that, it was just okay, well, I guess maybe he can't be the reliable wide receiver too in this offense. So it's if the Bills don't go out and get a Quentin Johnston during the draft, they don't draft Frederick Maryland's own Jordan Addison, we'll see. But James Cook could be a pretty interesting guy for that also, because if I remember correctly, what was his name? Isaiah McKenzie. Yeah, he's gone. Now,
Yes.
Jamison Crowder, he is also gone. A big feature of this offense is the slot receiver. Now, fairly, short, intermediate area of the field type stuff that we're talking about. Like, not super high ADOT, but like, maybe that's Khalil Shakir, but maybe they kind of supplement that type of value and dimension to the, mechanisms and scheme of the offense by dumping it off to the running back. From that standpoint alone, I will say there is a path for Cook. But it's for all the other reasons I laid out, like how much does it matter if the end zone opportunities are kind of capped,
Oh, you're not kidding. And I'm a quick shout out to amigo, our amigo dropped the mic. Happy opening day tomorrow. Wearing this one for you too. So making sure to say hello. You're right. Gosh, I mean, to see him get those screen passes, those 5 to 10 yard shots, that stuff that you get a slot receiver for, that would just be so sexy, and I think it would be fantastic for James Cook. And you're right. If Josh Allen slows down and doesn't do those crazy plays to in the red zone where he just throws his body with no abandon, maybe I think that the greater possibility is Damian Harris is going to get that, because he is only a year removed from a year where he scored, I think it was 15 touchdowns. So definitely in the teens. It had himself a great year, usurped by Rhamondre. I mean, I think this is kind of like a thunder and lightning kind of combination. I think I really hope James Cook gets some lightning. The next guy, I'm really curious about this one, because we do not besmirch the name of RoJo. We do not besmirch the name of RoJo, Ronald Jones. Rachaad White played in front of him for a while, then supplanted him. RoJo ended up getting a Super Bowl ring with the Kansas City Chiefs. So muy bien there. Rachaad White, one of the leader in receptions among the rookie running backs last year, 50 receptions, 290 yards, had himself a good all-around year, 179 total touches, and with 481 rushing yards. But this is a rebuilding offense with Baker Mayfield, and there's no Leonard Fournette anymore, who is still a free agent, by the way. But this is one for me. This is one where I'm worried they're going to add a running back on like late day 2 or during day 3, and that's going to eat into his production.
I don't know how to feel. Yeah. Dude, like Rachaad, he's so much fun though.
So good.
Like, oh my god.
Yes. Was there a last part of that question there? I felt like I cut you off by accident.
No, you didn't. Feel free, go for it.
Because I felt really bad for a second there. But yeah, so like, dude, so full disclosure. All right, I did the Hayden Health Mental Health Potathon with FFA Soft Crew last summer, and it was cool because I got to be on the show with Rachaad White, and he was super nice, and I was just like, oh my god. So like, of course I'm gonna root for the guy, man. Like, he's cool. So, like, just that being established, it clouds my judgment of him because I got to meet him kind of, and it was like super nice and like super friendly. But some of the criticisms that I've seen, like on top of the fact, like you mentioned, like rebuilding offense, like who knows, like post Tom Brady world, how good are they going to be? I have even more concerns about the fact that they have to not like entirely rebuild the offensive line, but like they do have to continue to add some depth to it because, like, man, with a lot of the injuries that they sustain, like, Ryan Jensen, if I remember correctly, the center, like, he got hurt like right out of the gate training camp, didn't even come back. Like, it was cool that he even came back, when they made the playoffs, but like it's too little too late by that point. And then, losing a lot of the guys to free agency that they did last year, like, bro, they have to continue to address that. Like, I remember like Donovan Smith was a guy that got thrust into like a pretty, impact role on that offensive line. I think they moved him out to tackle. He already got released. So like, they're going to have to continue to piece that together. Like, when people talk about what Rachaad White did last season, they'll mention the fact it's like, oh, well, he was terribly inefficient as a runner. I'm like, well, yes, so was Leonard Fournette. That was like a hallmark, I don't know how much of that had to do with them as it did with just the offensive line was garbage. As someone who roots for a team with a garbage offensive line, I can tell you that it makes a big difference no matter how talented the running back is behind it. You know, like Najee's my guy, you know, but there's a reason that he struggled because the Steelers didn't have anybody to block for him. It's the same problem that the Buccaneers had last year. And I don't know. I can't say. I don't know what to think about. Like, it's just, we're going to need to see how much they continue to add to that. And like you said, like somebody's going to be there. I don't know that this is going to be like giddy up Keyshawn Vaughn season. Here's finally his opportunity. Don't really see that, but like, I have too many questions. I have too many questions about Rachaad White.
I want good things for him, but the one thing that I think is playing in his favor, the definitely, you mentioned the offensive line help. They need to replace some guys on the defensive side of the ball. I think they need so much help in the draft that they might avoid the running back position and just kind of, and you know, or maybe just wait until, you know, day 3 and they don't have like a high caliber running back coming in and playing with them. So but I think also the other thing is you still got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on that offense. So he's not going so they're going to be taking some shots. Another guy who's not going to be seeing 8 men in a box because they're going to they have to respect the wide receivers who are top notch, both top 20 wide receivers. So that's the thing I like about his possibilities. So, so that's one. This next one probably would have been number 1 on this list, Breece Hall, if he hadn't gotten hurt. But that's the if. And as one of my primos, Primo Hector loves to say, there's no if in fantasy football. So, but you know what? 463 yards in just 7 games. So, where he took over the job, you know, early in the season. So tore his ACL. It's considered a clean tear. So not there was just the ACL. There was not multiple ligament injuries like Javonte Williams, which, you know, another guy in the other part of your backyard, J.K. Dobbins, was really struggling coming back from his own, you know, ACL tear. You know, right now he's going as the RB11, number 20 overall, coming off of ACL surgery. That to me seems rich when you've got, I think someone who do we have at number 24? There was somebody who did I see at number 20? Oh, I think it was Kenneth Walker was number 24 on that one. But Breece Hall, I mean, that seems a little high for me. I mean, unless he's running with the ones at the beginning of training camp, it's hard to expect a guy to, you know, come back at less, you know, when the season starts, at less than a year removed from that ACL surgery. I mean, I know people are going to be, you know, excited about that offense, but what are you? What's some of your feelings?
Yeah, one of the things that I've really picked up as time has gone along is just to be not like super skeptical by any means, but just like don't assume like, oh, we're removed from the injury, you know, changeo presto, it's fine again. Ooh, magic. Like, man, I don't know, dude. Like, yeah, okay. Like the medical surgery and science and stuff has continued to progress. We hear these kinds of things all the time when we talk about guys coming back from ACL tears. I mean, we even got a taste of it talking about players who tore their Achilles. We hear just like the medical field, all of these things. Look at these guys now. It's a case by case basis, dude. And like you said, cool thing about Breece Hall is that clean tear. We don't have to worry about the meniscus. We don't have to worry about the other stuff, and especially with the meniscus, because like, you know, not even just, you know, with football players, but I mean, like, I know like baseball players that have meniscus injuries or whatever. Like, even though you come back, because of how much you have to do with your legs, like there will be discomfort. You'll see guys struggle. And then what do? They have to go back in for a scope. They have to go back in just to clean it up one more time. And then you're like, well, damn. Okay, well, I had the guy in my lineup and he was out there and he was okay, but you're telling me he's going to have another surgery? Oh, you know, dude, I will wait until I hear the news about Breece Hall when we get to OTAs, when we get to camp and do all that. Like, the best way to assess these types of situations is to possess as much information as you can possibly get your hands on before you have to make the decision, which is what, like, best ball is its own thing, obviously, like, it doesn't really matter when you do a lot of those drafts. This is a fun time of year to be doing that stuff. But like for your redraft teams, like this is why I've always such a proponent of just like Thursday night kickoff. Usually there's that one lone game to kick off the season or whatever. I'm just like, bro, draft that weekend before, or if you want to, honestly, have your draft on that Wednesday night before the season kicks off. Have the information in front of you. Now, like, look, if BREECE is all good, I'm here for it. Like, the dude was electric. We already know what he can do. And, like, the backfield competition, like, Michael Carter, like, they served, like, fairly well in tandem somewhat. I felt they were a fun duo. But, like, Carter's not going to take so much away that, like, Hall's going to be a waste by any means. But even then, can't get hypothetical because we don't have the information yet. So just wait. Just wait. Learn as much as you can.
And I'm with you. If I'm drafting on the Wednesday before the first game, and it looks like Hall's coming in, but at number 20, that means you're probably drafting him as, if you're drafting as your number 1 running back, I'm not going to recommend that. If you're drafting as your number 2 running back, okay, but have somebody at the ready to be your number 2 running back. And that's the thing. Then you also have to invest that draft capital early or get lucky with a rookie or something like that, or somebody who takes over the job. And that's why it's hard for me to make that kind of investment in BREECE Hall unless the price starts to fall. And I don't know if the price is going to fall. When they get Aaron Rodgers, it's going to, Garrett Wilson's going to go to the moon.
Yeah.
Even Alan Lazard's going to be, getting people excited. I think it's, you know what? Recently I had a conversation with, I'm forgetting his name, so I don't want to throw it out there. But he's with the Fantasy Doctors, and he mentioned to me an interesting note that the last running back coming off an ACL to finish in the top 10 in the first year coming off the ACL was Adrian Peterson in that 2,000-yard season. That was 14 years ago. So that's just like, let's pump the brakes on big expectations. So, a couple guys that I want to ask you about. One guy that you already touched on, but a couple guys. Do we still hope for 2 guys in particular? Isaiah Spiller for the Chargers, Jerome Ford with the Browns, considering the fact that there's no more, and at this time no Kareem Hunt there. Spiller, I mean, I know we're still waiting to hear what happens with Austin Eckler, but has the boat passed him? I mean, I can't see the Chargers going another year. I think it'd be 4 years in a row if they draft another running back.
Right? Re-rolling and re-rolling again. That's at a certain point you maybe have to stop taking those chances on those guys. To your point, like because I saw I was watching NFL Network earlier and I saw Bucky Brooks had the latest mock draft that he did. He had Bijan going to the Chargers, and I was like, would that that'd be cool? Like, don't get me wrong, but dude, I don't think they can afford to do that. To your point, and then also, I mean, Josh Kelly actually started to look okay at times. Yeah, last year, and he was already name dropped by Kellen Moore once. So I mean, it's off-season coach speak. So I mean, I'm not going to assign a ton of value to that, but I don't know, Spiller, man, I'm kind of giving up, which sucks because I took a lot of him in the late second round of my rookie drafts last year. But we'll see. You never know. I mean, maybe with the change at OC, maybe what Kellen Moore is going to install can play more to his skill set than what Joe Lombardi had in place. But we don't know. But at least for now, I can't really say. And then Jerome Ford, I kind of liked him as a prospect. He definitely has the burst. He definitely has some of the speed, but I always felt like his vision was kind of questionable. I kind of just felt like he was one of those dudes, you pull back in the slingshot and he just goes, just reckless abandon. Right. I'm like, this is where I'm running, which, cool. And I guess you can kind of do that in Cleveland a little bit. So maybe if the opportunity's there and they don't add anybody, the guy behind Nick Chubb has value. So if I'm picking between the two, I'm probably going to pick Ford. Just because both Ford and Spiller carry painfully low floors. But if we're going to talk about what the hypothetical ceiling of either one of them is, like, fewer things need to happen for Jerome Ford to potentially blossom than need to happen for Spiller. For Spiller, we're talking like 2 or 3 dudes potentially ahead of him that have to get hurt, you know?
Yeah, I think the one thing that's going to tell me if Spiller's got a shot is if the Chargers avoid running back at or even an early running back. So
Yeah.
in the draft, so that, but I can't see them not drafting anybody. You know, you always, but Spiller, I want to believe, but man, I mean, I watched those Charger games and it just wasn't pretty a lot of times. I mean, I know their line, he had the big injury with Rashawn Slater, but it's still, you make up some some of the plays on your own. So, but speaking of making plays, and you touched on him a second ago, he's not a year 2 guy, but he's a guy who had 1,000-yard season last year as a year 2 running back. And Najee Harris was able to, kind of battle through that foot injury that hurt him at the beginning of the season. Could this be a step forward season for him if he's healthy? Because they have invested some in the line, they being the Steelers.
Yes, dude. And I'm glad you mentioned it because I feel like a lot of people, even during the season, I feel like a lot of people were just overlooking the fact that, like you said, Najee was dealing with that foot injury. Like, it's cool that it didn't get any worse necessarily, but like that was a real concern. Like, he looked pretty fine, all things considered. But like, I really, really like what the front office has been putting together. Like, because this is the first offseason that Omar Khan fully has the GM job. Because they had, Kevin Colbert kind of stuck around, held his hand through the NFL draft and then, pieced out into retirement. But like, Khan's putting his mark on this team, but also the assistant GM, whose name I cannot remember right now, which would be really convenient if I could remember his name to make this point. But there was a guy that was one of like the personnel director people over with the Eagles, which is like, so you can kind of tell that there's a little bit of that influence in there based off of the guys that they've already brought in, like Isaac Seumalo, over there from that Eagles offensive line that was so good last year. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Nate Herbig from the New York Jets, like super underrated signing. Like, I mean, I don't know how much of an impact he's going to have per se, but like definitely measured out pretty well with the run blocking metrics. You get that little connection because, Joe Douglas being the guy up there, he used to be in Philadelphia as well. There's kind of a, at least, strategic connection there. So you can kind of see where it makes sense. Welcome to Pittsburgh. And we'll see what happens with the draft because that pick, that first round pick, I really want it to be an offensive tackle. We'll have to see. Oh my God. Like, if it means they have to trade up to get Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson or somebody like that, fine. Hey, Philadelphia, what are you doing with the number 10 overall pick? Would you be interested in 17 and some extra draft picks? Yes, please. Like, I would absolutely, honestly, that's just my dream scenario. That's kind of, if the Steelers can't move up, then like, fine, take a cornerback or something. But I just want them to move up and take a tackle. But long-winded. Yes, the additions that they've made are specifically to address the run blocking of the offensive line. Like, those, the 2 guys that they brought in are specifically very good at that facet of things. Indicates to me that's the direction that they want to go, and that's Pittsburgh Steelers football, baby. You got to smash mouth and do the thing with defense on the other side.
And just like, and by the way, Toronto Dave made the great notation. Najee looked a lot better after the bye week.
Yes.
It seemed like his foot was all the way healthy. And I mean, to me, when a guy's got a warrior mentality and he plays through a foot injury, to me, that says something about him. So I want to bet on him this year. And plus, we know that Tomlin likes to use the bell cow. So that's why. And oh, by the way, we were talking about number 24. Najee's number 24 behind Breece Hall. I'm going to take Najee over Breece Hall in a heartbeat.
The question, I mean, yeah, because like you said, we already kind of went over the question marks of Breece Hall, but if we're going to weigh that against what is probably going to look better for Najee, like, bro, like, I'm here for it. At least as far as things stand right now, I'm absolutely here for that, dude. And like TD said, shout out TD, toward the end of the season, that like it was a point of emphasis during that bye week from Matt Canada trying to save his ass from being fired from that job and as the offensive coordinator. They had to right the ship with the rushing attack. Like, it was so, like, he honestly can't afford to not have a good game, good run game, and keep his job at this point. It is like, I'm amazed that he kept his job, frankly. So, like, even just taking it, off, the field of play and just onto the sideline. I think that's another reason people should be excited, is because it's like the dude in charge of calling the plays is trying to make sure he keeps having a job. He's incentivized to make sure that Najee Harris is good.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we got to close up shop, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds to not besmirch the name of Ronald Jones.
Thank you very much. And even though this began as a very strange bit with really no intent of ever taking it this far, Ronald Jones is super good at playing professional football, even if he doesn't get on the field very much and he gets buried on depth charts. You know what he has that a lot of other people don't? 2 Super Bowl rings. That's right. For all we know, he could be the guy in the locker room that everybody's like, oh, look at that. It's my man, Ronald. Perhaps the impact of, his presence even goes beyond the football field. So, you know what? I don't care if he never sees the field in Dallas. I don't care if they draft somebody and he only suits up maybe 3 times. He is the heart and soul of every football team that he is on. And you do not besmirch the name of Ronald Jones.
He's a good luck charm. He's a good luck
He must
charm.
be, honestly. There's no other explanation at this point, because like my original purpose for the whole thing, like, I've been proven wrong. Maybe not that good of a running back, but for some reason it keeps working wherever he goes. So look, there's merit to it. There is merit to it.
Oh, man. Oh, I love it when tears are coming out and I'm laughing. So, yes, and we definitely say suck it to all haters. Haters gonna hate. Haters gonna hate. So, mi amigo, one more time. We're gonna close up shop. I want you also to give a shout out to the Lateral Show.
Oh yeah. So I decided to bring back my my podcast. It's not fantasy based, per se, because like, I got myself a platform over at the Draft Sharks. Like, I can do my fantasy during the day and my regular football talk at night on Thursdays, usually somewhere between like 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern time. It's me and 2 other people, 3 topics. You talk about stuff and then the show ends. It's just some nice, clean fun with bad words, talking about the NFL.
I love it. I know we got to get a night where I'll bring a little Familia action. So yes, I'm always gonna make time for Herms. So mi amigo. So again, Familia, make sure you're following Herms at Herms NFL and find his Draft Sharks, and make sure you're giving a like and subscribe to the Lateral Show, because honestly, it's one of the great intros that you're gonna hear anywhere, and just everything is top notch when it comes to Herms. So mad love for you, brother. Thank you again. Thank you everybody in the chat. Muchas gracias for joining us. And again, make sure you're giving us a like and subscribe at Familia FFB on YouTube, familiaffb.com. Oh my goodness, the chat was just awesome today. Yes, make sure you're going to Familia FFB on Instagram, Facebook, and it's all there. So make sure you're giving us, oh my goodness, there's so much good stuff going on here. And also the audio version, go to Anchor. Go to Anchor, subscribe, Apple, Google, Spotify. Muchas gracias for them. So everybody, happy opening day for baseball. You're going to start seeing some content coming out from me from baseball, so stay tuned a little bit there. So keep an eye on my Twitter account, so you're going to see some fantasy baseball content. So it's going to be good times. So so enjoy baseball. Enjoy this lead up to the NFL draft. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed it with my buen amigo. Always remember, familia. Todos somos familia. Salud.